Hi. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys some of the methods I use to read in my third language, which is Spanish. I've spent only 3 years learning Spanish, so I just finished my third year of learning Spanish, and so I'm not all that good in the language yet. But even though I'm not very good, I'm not perfect yet, right? I want to read the Spanish translation of Lord of the Rings. And it is of older language is used, as well as the Spanish dialect, the European Spanish dialect is used when writing the text. And so, of course, it's a little bit different to what I'm used to. I'm used to modern day Spanish, right? I'm not used to older texts in the language. And I'm definitely not used to European Spanish. I'm mostly used to Latin American Spanish. I'm mostly used to Mexican Spanish. And so, well, we're going to read it anyways. So I'm just going to, this is just a random section of the text, and I'm going to flip my camera. Okay, so I'm going to start here. I'm just going to read, and wherever I don't know a word, I'm going to stop, okay? So, la noche había caído y unas estrellas blancas brillaban en el cielo cuando Frodo y sus compañeros llegaron al fin al cruce del Camino Verde, ya cerca de la aldea. Okay, so I don't know what aldea means, right? It's kind of familiar, but I don't know what the word exactly means. So did I understand all of this when I was reading through it? Not all of it, right? So when I go back, okay, well, I know I understood these parts, right? Y unas estrellas blancas brillaban, la noche había caído, right? It was nighttime, the stars were shining, and then at that time, Frodo and his companions finally reached the cross of the green path, and then near the, I don't know what aldea means, right? So that is basic translation, but I don't do that translation while I'm reading. I'm just thinking, okay, la noche había caído. I know what that means. Unas estrellas blancas brillaban en el cielo. Okay. Cuando Frodo y sus compañeros llegaron al fin al cruce del Camino Verde. So I take the sentence and I break it up into bite-sized pieces so that I could understand it. Okay, moving on. Avanzaron hacia, and now I don't know what aldea means, but it's not impeding my understanding, right, of the sentence. Avanzaron hacia la puerta del este y la encontraron cerrada. Again, I'm just like going through piece by piece. Avanzaron hacia la puerta del este y la encontraron cerrada. Okay. Pero un hombre está sentado frente a la casita al otro lado de la cerca. Okay. Let's see. So casita here was not extremely familiar to me, but what can I tell? Casa, casita. It probably means a small home, a small house, and they're going to the prancing pony. An advantage of this is that I know the story in English, and so they're going to the prancing pony, and that's what they call the casita, which is really interesting, right? So that's kind of like a little cultural thing as well, that they called that sort of a thing a small house, or at least they called it back then, right? El hombre se incorporó de un salto, alcanzó una linterna. Oh, linterna. I could probably guess that means lantern. Y los miró por encima de la puerta de trancas, sorprendido. ¿Qué quieren y de dónde vienen? Preguntó con tono áspero. Oh, áspero. I could probably tell it kind of means aspired. It kind of might mean that he's a little bit just not having it, right? Not having them being there, right? So I can kind of tell áspero. That kind of sounds like a cognate. I can't really point my finger to it, but I can tell it's something that I'm familiar with. But also, within it doesn't mean aspired, obviously, but within the context of the text, I can tell, oh, he's just exacerbated. He's exasperated by them, and he's just like, what do you guys want, you know? And it's really dark outside. It's really late, so he's just, you know. Buscamos la posada. Oh, I don't know what posada means. That might kind of impede my understanding of the entire of some of the text, but I could probably find out later. Vamos hacia el este y no podemos ir más lejos esta noche. Oh, okay, so they want to stay somewhere, right? Because they can't go anywhere else. And then he can tell that they're hobbits. Dijo el guardián a media voz y como hablándose a sí mismo, right? Oh, okay, so he was kind of talking almost to himself. So, but it says a media voz, so it almost is like, oh, he was talking kind of quietly, but not really all that much, right? Obviously, the hobbits can hear him, right? But it's also like, oh, well, he's almost talking to himself, right? Maybe he doesn't mean for them to hear it, but it's kind of like, yeah, we can hear you, dude. Y lo que es más de la comarca, según parece por el acento. So he can tell, oh, who are they? They're 4 hobbits. They're from the comarca. Again, I don't know what comarca means, right? But that, again, that doesn't impede my understanding of the text, right? Here, this kind of, oops, go back. This, buscamos la posada, this kind of impedes my understanding a little bit, so I want to search it up really quickly. So see, really quickly, posada, right? An inn or lodge. I could probably tell that through the context though, right? Because he's like, we don't have anywhere to stay, so we can't go any further tonight, right? Because it's dark out and whatnot. So yeah, so some things like these, not really, not trapping yourself in words you don't know, right? Keep on going. Just don't trap yourself. Don't stop, hesitate, think, oh my God, what does this word mean? Don't even do any of that, right? Try to think, what might this word mean in context, right? But don't try to get boggled down on it. As well as, you can tell some words oh, if I don't know this word, it doesn't really impede my understanding of the text because I can tell through the context, okay, this is what they mean by the word. But also, right, it's not my first language. It's not my first language, and so I shouldn't have to expect myself to understand every single thing when it comes into my ear or when I'm seeing it on the page. So I can't just keep on reading and expect myself to understand all of it. I sometimes have to look at the sentence and take it into bite-sized pieces and figure out, okay, what's the message, right? And if I want to use this, if this is something that I'm just reading because I need to read it, I don't want to get boggled down into the words, right? But if I want to learn, right, words, if that's why I'm reading, if I want to learn vocabulary, I would wait for a moment, think about what can this word mean in context, right? And then think about, okay, well, can I look it up, right? Word reference is free. Spanish dictionary is free, right? You can just look up words super quickly. Actually, I would recommend word reference a lot more than Spanish dictionary, but that's just how I roll. But also, let's show a little bit about grammar. So let me see something that can show how you can use this to better your understanding of grammar. So here, let's so muy bien, hold on. No quise ofenderlos. Oh, here, this is interesting, right? No quise ofenderlos. This man is speaking to them, and remember the context, right? This is European Spanish, and so they have vosotros. Oh, he's being pretty respectful here, right? He's using ustedes instead of vosotros, even though they have vosotros. And then he's like, oh, I didn't mean to offend you guys. So that's interesting, right? Some things that you can tell that will further your understanding of the overall story and kind of lead you to think about some characters more, more carefully, right? You would learn to understand characters better. So here, let me show you. Se preguntó por qué el hombre parecía tan suspicaz. Se preguntó por qué el hombre parecía tan suspicaz. Okay, so how can I use this to learn grammar, right? So here se preguntó, I know that that's the preterite form. ¿Por qué el hombre parecía? Oh, I see the sort of the imperfect form, right? I see the imperfect form here. Pareció probably would be the preterite form. But it also makes a lot of sense, right? When you hear it, se preguntó por qué el hombre parecía tan suspicaz. It sounds right, okay? But that's kind of interesting with the grammar, right? So he, I think it's Frodo, yes. Frodo is asking himself, why did this man appear so suspicious, right? So he, Frodo, is doing an action, and he's asking himself why the man appeared suspicious. And so the man was doing something, but Frodo did something. Do you see how you can kind of tell the difference between the imperfect, and the preterite through just reading the sentence and thinking about it, right? So the man was acting suspicious, was seeming suspicious, right? Looked suspicious, essentially. But Frodo did the action of asking himself. Frodo asked himself why the man appeared so suspicious. Y si alguien no habría estado pidiendo noticias de un grupo de hobbits. So, this is interesting. So essentially, Frodo asked himself two things. One, why was the man acting so suspicious? The man, I think, is Aragorn, I think. Yeah, I think it's Aragorn. I'm not sure, though. Anyways, he asked himself, why was the man acting so suspicious? And if someone had been asking for news from a group of hobbits, so what does this mean? And if someone had asked the man to give them news of the hobbits, right? To deliver some information about the hobbits. Was someone asking about the hobbits? Was someone asking about them? That's what Frodo was asking himself here, right? So, and then here we have the conditional plus the past form. And I forgot what that is, actually. I forgot the grammatical term for it. But I think it's pluscuamperfecto, I think. Or the, I don't know what it is in English, but I think it was pluscuamperfecto in Spanish. Conditional, perfect conditional, I think. Condicional perfecto. Yep, there we go. Right? So, condicional perfecto, right? The perfect conditional form. And so that's interesting, right? Because the perfect forms are usually, both the perfect and the imperfect are usually, what's it called? In past tense, right? So, not usually, they're basically always in past tense when you hear someone say, oh, the perfect form or the imperfect form, right? They're in past tense. And so here we have the conditional, the perfect conditional form being used. Y si alguien no habría estado pidiendo noticias de un grupo de hobbits. Also, how did I figure out what this meant super quickly? I actually read the next word, Gandalf. So he's kind of, Frodo's thinking, oh, Gandalf told Aragorn that we're gonna be here, that kind of thing. And so even using the next few words to guide your understanding of the text also help. And then you can learn some grammar from this, right? From si alguien no habría estado pidiendo noticias de un grupo de hobbits, right? And you can I usually used to note it on my notebook, be like, oh, I usually would write this section down. Si alguien no habría estado pidiendo noticias de un grupo de hobbits. And then I would write the full sentence down, because, by the way, if you write this down, it kind of doesn't make sense, right? It's very incomplete it's a dependent clause, and so you need the full sentence. But I would write it down and I would be like, oh, let's understand some of the cool, linguistic and grammatical stuff that are happening in this sentence. And let's remember the structure. Well, remembering the structure is also very important, right? You read something and then you're like, oh, well, this is how it's used in this language, right? This is how this message is delivered in this language. And so you can kind of think, oh, well, I probably also could use that. And then, just for last thing, this is also interesting. So here we go through, let's go through this whole paragraph. Les deseo buenas noches y no dijo más. Okay, so here we have both preterites, pero Frodo alcanzó a ver a la luz de la linterna que el hombre no dejaba de mirarlos. So, alcanzó, dejaba, right? We have the alcanzó, which is the preterite form, and then we have dejaba, which is, dejaba, which is the imperfect form. Right? Because the man is continuing to do this, right? He is still looking at them. Even after saying goodnight to them and not saying anything else, he's still looking at them. Right? And even when I said that sentence just now, he is still looking at them. Or he was still looking at them, that would be more accurate. That in and of itself, in English, right, is very similar to saying no dejaba de mirarlos. Okay, but of course it's not exactly that, because there's a difference in Spanish, right? Some people get trapped into thinking, oh, Spanish is so similar to English, therefore it is too similar, or it's similar in ways that it's not, right? Dejar de mirar, right? In English there's nothing really like that, right? If you try to translate it to English, literally, it doesn't make sense. Okay, but so it's not exactly, oh, he was still looking at them, but it's very similar in terms of grammar to he was still looking at them. So if you can tell like some of those similarities and differences in terms of grammar. And then it says, se alegró oír el golpe de la puerta que se cerraba, right? This is an action. The hearing the door shutting behind them made him happy, right? So this, the door shutting behind them, the door is performing an action, but so is hearing that door shutting, right? That whole thing is also performing the action. So that's interesting, right? There are two verbs. One is in preterite, one is in imperfect, right? Two actions are occurring at the same time. Mientras avanzaban. Oh, again we have the imperfect, right? Because these two things are continuing to occur. The door is continuing to close behind them, and they are continuing to advance. But hearing the door shut behind them made him happy, right? It just made him happy. That was just an event, and it ended. Okay, and we already went through this. Tenía tiempo de haber llegado. mientras ellos se demoraban en el bosque y las quebradas. So here, se demoraban, I don't know what demorarse means. I think that's actually kind of important. So I would search that up really quickly. Right? But I can tell what the verb is, right? Through the conjugation of the verb. Where is it? Sorry, I lost it. Se demoraban. So let's see. To delay, to hold up. Okay. So while they were delaying, while they were just staying in the garden, and the stalls, yeah. Y las quebradas. So tenía tiempo de haber llegado. This is not something that I could be like, oh, I know exactly what this is, and I know exactly what the grammatical structure of this means and whatnot, right? I can't really say that, especially when I'm reading it, right? Because I'm not a linguist, right? But I can say, oh, that kind of makes sense to me based upon the knowledge that I have of the Spanish language. And so I'm going to say, okay, tenía tiempo de haber llegado. Okay, I'm going to remember this structure. And I'm going to think, is it kind of similar to English? He had time to have arrived, right? He had time to have arrived. But this tenía, the time, right, is in past tense, but it is sort of continuous, right? Where he had a span of time to have arrived. That's basically what that is saying, right? And so he had some time. It was sort of continuous. So we wouldn't say tuvo tiempo de haber llegado. Actually, that is not grammatically incorrect. Tuvo tiempo de haber llegado, but it implies that it was just, some time that's pretty limited, right? A span of time that's limited. And so it's not tenía tiempo, which implies that he had a larger span of time that was perhaps not as limited or as restricted as, we have learned that when we use sort of the imperfect form of the verb, it's kind of like continuous, right? And so the span of time that Gandalf had was a far larger span of time than tuvo tiempo de haber llegado. Yes, tuvo tiempo de haber llegado is correct, but it does not imply that he had a long time or he had an unrestricted amount of time to have arrived. And so, again, de haber llegado, to have arrived, right? But de is not exactly translated into to. In this context, it means to, right? We want to acknowledge those things. Mientras, right? Tenía mientras ellos se demoraban, right? So usually when we use the imperfect, we actually also want to use another verb that is either in the imperfect or the preterite. And this is actually also true in Farsi. That's very interesting. Right? So this, again, this is interesting because it's not, just saying tenía tiempo de haber llegado. It's not really complete as tuvo tiempo de haber llegado, right? Because some other action must have occurred during that time. okay, or while that was happening, right? Mientras, meanwhile, or while, right? Ellos se demoraban. They were delaying themselves, right? So that kind of, learning about those grammatical structures is really interesting. And then, pero había habido algo en la mirada y la voz del guardián que lo había inquietado. Okay, so this one is a little bit more of a complex sentence, but we can tell, okay, so the verbs in the sentence, había habido, había inquietado. Okay, we can already tell what inquietado means, right? Even as Spanish speakers, we can as English speakers, we can probably like take that quiet word out of that word, right? And be like, oh, he had silenced him, right? The guardian had silenced Gandalf, right? And so, again, had silenced him. Had, había, silenced, inquietado, him, lo. Right? But lo comes before lo había inquietado. So, but again, pero había habido, okay, algo en la mirada y la voz del guardián que lo había inquietado. There was something in the facial expression and the voice of the guardian that had silenced him, right? And so that would be the English translation, and we can tell, we can kind of note these structures of these verbs. And even if we have absolutely no introduction to them, we can note these structures and think, oh, well, where do they stem from? And can I use them, right? And when we do this a lot, right, we can start to identify those structures a lot more and a lot more quickly. And then, as we start to speak for ourselves, right, and let go of any sort of fear, right, or write for ourselves in the target language, we would start to be able to use those structures ourselves. And as we practice more with that same phenomenon, right, writing and speaking for ourselves, we would get more and more comfortable with using those structures. Also, these are like this sentence, pero había habido algo en la mirada y la voz del guardián que lo había inquietado. If I were to write this on the AP Spanish Language and Culture test, they would give me 4 points extra right then and there, because I used complex grammatical structures. Había habido, right? I mean, I think that's the pluscuamperfecto. I think so, but I'm not sure. But it's one of the perfect forms, and the perfect forms are very complex especially for people like me, right? And so, but I can learn to use them through just reading and noting those structures, right? And so that those 4 extra points would not seem as impossible, right? So thank you so much for watching.